Welcome everyone to this significant day as we come together to honor the Tejano Confederate Memorial Statue. This monument is a testament to our commitment as an organization, one that is steadfast, non-racial, non-political, and dedicated to preserving the heritage of all Texans, including the Tejanos, who served with courage and distinction. Today, we defy the stereotypes too often applied to Southern history by celebrating the legacy of the Medina Guards and the many Tejano regiments that served Texas with unwavering loyalty. Our goal here is to tell the full story of Texas, one that includes the sacrifices and contributions of Tejano soldiers. We are not here to promote division or racial sentiment, as detractors might claim, but rather to honor these figures who, like all Texans, played a vital role in shaping the history of our great state. If our purpose were exclusionary, we wouldn't be dedicating a statue to Hispanic Texans. This monument is not marked by any Confederate symbolism. It is designed to embody the spirit of all Tejano ancestors and to allow each viewer to find their own connection to history. So I would like to thank the Ruiz-Herrera Cemetery Association for making this day possible, along with the Sons of Confederate Veterans, the United Daughters of the Confederacy, the Order of Southern Cross, the Military Order of Stars and Bars, and each individual who contributed to bringing this tribute to life. A huge shout out to our friends Monuments Across Dixie who supported this project from start to finish. And to anyone else who played a role, whether large or small, please know that your contributions have been vital in bringing this day to fruition. This dedication is not about me or any single individual. It is a day for our Tejano brothers and sisters to embrace the pride of honoring ancestors whose legacy they hold dear. We hope that this statue will serve as a lasting tribute, inspiring future generations to recognize and respect the diverse stories that make up Texas's history. Thank you all for joining us today and celebrating this important part of our shared heritage. I would like to move on to our highest dignitary. He comes all the way from Tyler, Texas, and he is one of the most outstandingly righteous people that I know, Commander Michael Hurley. If you go ahead and come on up.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right, everybody, they tell me I'm the keynote speaker. Bad news for all of you. But we are so glad that all of you are here. Before I get started with my formal remarks, I think it's very important that I recognize our Army of Trans-Mississippi Commander, Mr. John McCammon. John is on our General Executive Council, one of our national leaders for the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and he's the highest ranking official of the SCV that's here. So, John, can you raise your hand? We want to recognize you, sir. And I know he's already been recognized, but I also want to recognize the National Commander of the Order of the Southern Cross who spoke to you earlier, Mr. James Alderman. James came all the way from the Fort Worth Mid-Cities area to be with you today. And I know that the Order of Southern Cross has made significant contributions financially to the beautiful monument behind me. And the OSC does so much good for our Southern heritage throughout the country, and you certainly deserve to be recognized. And then finally, on a personal note, all of our UDC ladies, let me thank you so much for being here. First, because of your presence, it's a lot prettier and smells better here because of all of you. And one of the greatest 2 years of my life was when I had the privilege of serving as the first gentleman of the Texas Division, United Daughters of the Confederacy, as my wife served as a past president. And what was great about that was the opportunities I had to go to so many chapters throughout Texas and to meet the ladies who have so much talent, energy, and zeal for defending our Southern heritage. Quite frankly, ladies, I don't know what the South would be like if it was not for you and your organization's dedication for decades and decades now. And we thank you so much for that contribution. Let's give our UDC a hand. They certainly deserve it. The Word of God tells us in Revelation 14:13, "Blessed are those who die in the Lord henceforth. Yea, they shall rest from their labors, and their deeds do follow them." Taken in proper context, a verse encouraging us to remain faithful to death, but a reminder as well that we will all have the deeds in this life follow us. Thankfully, those deeds, some of which are for all of us sinful, do not sentence us to death or separation, but our deeds do follow us. And we are here today in this hallowed ground to celebrate the deeds of men and women who've gone before us. And so, it's altogether appropriate to start with the perfect Word of God. We've come here, you see, on this hallowed ground, hallowed by the deeds of those who served with distinction, bravery, tenacity, and ferociousness in the face of what turned out to be an overwhelming military, material of war, and treasury. A fledgling nation, only a few short years in existence, and yet its heroic feats on the field of battle and upon the oceans of the world are still studied and admired. These brave men, whose graves surrounding us this afternoon, cry out to us. The cry, so solemnly etched upon many UDC monuments across our great Southern Confederacy, with the words, "Lest we forget." It was with this same feeling that retired Confederate General Stephen D. Lee gave the charge to the Sons of Confederate Veterans in 1906. And I'd like to read that to you at this time. The charge. To you, Sons of Confederate Veterans, we will commit the vindication of the cause for which we fought. To your strength will be given the defense of the Confederate soldier's good name, the guardianship of his history, the emulation of his virtues, and the perpetuation of those principles which he loved and which you love also, and those ideals which made him glorious and which you also cherish. Given to the Sons of Confederate Veterans, then in convention simultaneously with the United Confederate Veterans in New Orleans, Louisiana, all the way back to April 25th, 1906. One of the unique things about the Sons of Confederate Veterans is that many times committees will be formed to write a slogan that will summarize the work of that organization. How fortunate we have been in the SCV that our slogan was delivered to us by a former Confederate general and has had need of no change in well over 115 years. So today, 160 years later after the war, we the sons, grandsons, great-grandsons, some of us, like myself, great-great-great-grandsons of the long gray line still gather upon hallowed ground such as this to remember and keep the charge. 3 very brief points. First, we are all encouraged to vindicate the cause for which they fought. It's very difficult to put in just a few short paragraphs really the political reason of which our ancestors fought. And to the common soldier, many of these were not at the forefront, but I do think they're important and worth remembering. First, the very idea of secession was based upon the belief, listen carefully, that each individual state within the Union was sovereign. A belief passed down from the authors of our Declaration of Independence, the Constitution of the United States, and the Bill of Rights. The very men who placed their fortunes, reputations, and personal well-being and chose to wage war against what was at the time the greatest military power in the world and defied the British Empire led by King George III. Each state then, after the Revolution, voluntarily bound itself to a union of others for the purpose of mutual defense, the perpetuation of commerce between states and foreign nations, and for the negotiation with foreign powers. It was never the intention of the original founding fathers, the majority of them, that the federal government should ever supersede the power of the state government. Why, to this day, aren't we all so proud to be Texans? My wife and I took a trip to the British Isles in August, and everywhere we would go, seeing my plump belly and my wonderful accent, they would say, "Are you an American?" And without hesitation, "No, sir, I'm from Texas." And I am American, and I'm not saying I'm not proud of my American citizenship. What I'm saying is there's something special about being from Texas. And I'm quite sure every state, including our brother from Tennessee, feels the same way about his great state. Over the course of the 50 years of American history preceding the war for Southern independence, it became apparent that the majority within the Union at that time sought to unfairly impose itself upon the state or states who at that time were found in the minority. failure to recognize the laws of those states, the practice of economic sanctions against one state to another, and even the encouragement of insurrection within southern states was all occurring in the years prior to the war. It became obvious that the southern states, once joined in a union, could no longer remain in such a union, where the voice of her people and the rights of her citizens were no longer regarded or represented. The people of Texas, unique among southern states, actually held an election and exercised their constitutional rights, and by overwhelming majority, the people of Texas, in democratic elections, voted to leave that union that they voluntarily joined just a few decades previous. So the question is obvious. What would cause them to leave behind a union that offered so many advantages? And my friends, they were many. What would cause them to leave behind the benefits of that union? And they were great. What would cause them to release the ties of affection and admiration that had grown over those years? And they were close and enduring. The answer is simple, as Texans have always done. It was a belief that the people of Texas were better able to govern themselves than a president in Washington whose focus was on the needs and the desires of the states then in the majority to the detriment of those states in the minority. It was this political cause that they fought, and we thus labor to defend and vindicate. Secondly, the charge tells us to give a defense of his good name. Our brave Confederate forefathers left to us a military tradition of valor, patriotism, devotion to duty, and a spirit of self-sacrifice that is unequaled in military history. The Confederate soldier, by his deeds of valor on the field and charity while on the march through enemy territory, quite the opposite of our enemies at the time, our charity while on the march through enemy territory resulted in the Confederacy earning the admiration of the world. And while facing overwhelming numbers, as I expressed earlier, of equipment, treasury, and manpower, yet they were able to persevere and push the enemy into panic and terror time and time again. You don't think that's true? Just read the history of General Joseph Hooker at the Battle of Chancellorsville. Thirdly, the charge encourages us to emulate the virtues and to perpetuate the principles and ideals which made the Southern soldier glorious. As we all know, we're living in difficult and dangerous times for our Southern heritage. Not since Reconstruction have we seen such vicious attacks against our culture, our traditions, and our beliefs. We, the sons and the daughters of Confederate veterans, must once again rise up to face a well-organized and well-funded political enemy. But my encouragement to you today is, let us not grow weary. As the charge reminds us, it is our duty, and even more importantly, our honor and privilege, to take up the mantle of honoring our families, honoring our heroes, many of whom are buried here, and in countless graves across the warm Southland. Their memories must not be forgotten. And we have that responsibility to pass the true historical facts of our rich heritage on and the traditions of our culture on to the next generation. My friends, if you've noticed, knowing that we had several speakers, I have intentionally omitted making any direct reference to the Tejano statue itself, not because we're not here to dedicate it, but I think it's the responsibility of us to recognize that while their contribution was amazingly important, the Confederate Army was made up of many different men from various cultures. From the Tejano soldiers who we've come here to dedicate this memorial, to Jewish soldiers, to soldiers of color, to soldiers of Scotch-Irish descent, which, by the way, were definitely looked down upon at the time. And yes, many of the soldiers from what we might call the aristocratic Old South all came together from various backgrounds and cultures to defend a right they believed. So, in conclusion, while it's altogether fitting that we memorialize this unique and valuable contribution of the Tejano soldier to the Confederacy today, we cannot forget the thousands of our humble Confederate forefathers who joined them in placing their reputations, their homes, their treasury, and even their lives upon the altar of the cause of Southern freedom. They too died just as bravely for their country as those who opposed us. The same blood which flowed from their veins now flows in ours. And as we've come to know as genealogists, the same DNA that made up their bodies is a part of our DNA today. They deserve our grateful remembrance, they deserve our expressions of praise. They deserve our tributes of love. For you see, my fellow prisoners, our Southerners, where did I get prisoners? Woo! My fellow Southerners, what we're doing here today is not unique. All grateful people have remembered and venerated their patriot dead. From Ireland, often known as Erin, that little land has given more than her fair share of blood and shown courage in the face of overwhelming odds, and she still honors the name of her faithful martyred Michael Collins. Scotland still speaks fondly of the bravery of William Wallace. England whispers the name in fond memory of Winston Churchill. Israel remembers the name of her brave King David. And Sparta, though long dead, echoes from her tomb the name Leonidas. And the South, may God smile upon her. May her people still remember her martyred dead and speak of their deeds with adoration and pride. For my friends, as long as we remember and teach our children and our grandchildren of the deeds of men like Lee, Jackson, Forrest, and Claiborne, then the future of our way of life shall remain secure in the memory of her sons and daughters. It is my prayer that peace cover this hallowed Confederate memorial, and that the graves behind it that have long held the graves of our Southern heroes continue to be blessed, that laurel wreaths of flowers shall continue to be laid upon their tombs, and may honor always be to their ashes. Thank you so much.
Fire in the hole!
Oh, so start to finish, we were actually approached by the Ruiz-Herrera Cemetery Association, and they were looking to find headstones and, access the VA, doing to honor their ancestors. And since the VA still does Confederate headstones, we looked into that. We ended up starting to raise money for Southern Crosses of Honor, and we were able to put in quite a few Southern Crosses of Honor. And then the plinth, it was just sitting here, and one of the board of directors said, hey, we've got this plinth. I mean, if you want to put a statue on it, it's up to you. And that's really what gave birth to us starting the fundraising. And it happened late in 2021, so this is close to 3 years in the making. And we started fundraising, so we started Arms Reach. We went to our brother SCV camps. They started to donate. The Lone Star Grays were one of the biggest contributors to the project, and they're one of the smaller camps, so them making such a large contribution is a testament to their resolve and their want for this statue. And so the statue itself is basically in honor of the Medina Guards. And so the men of Von Ormy, or what was known as Paso de la Garza, they were mustered in, and they were called the Medina Guards. And coincidentally enough, we had Commander Charles Thacker from the Medina Grays, which is almost kind of like their namesake camp, so having them here was exceptional. I loved it. Now the statue itself is more generic because it tells a more thorough story. That it gives the opportunity for the families that ancestors rest here. They can show this statue to their children and their grandchildren and explain who their ancestor was. From start to finish, it was about 2.5 years. A lot of it was fundraising, and we did a lot of different methods, not only fellow camps, but reaching out to the Order of Southern Cross. They were one of our biggest contributors. Even the association here, they gave the rest of the money, so we were able to start the process of having the statue commissioned. So the artist, his name is Mr. Jin, and he's an associate of Monuments Across Dixie. And Monuments Across Dixie has done over 60 monuments in the last 6 years. So they are the driving force of preserving our monuments and creating new monuments. And you know, their whole slogan is, you know, you take one down, we're going to put two up. And this is kind of a testament to that. And they believe so much in telling the story of these Tejano Confederates that they literally charged us $12,000 for this incredible bronze statue. And start to finish, they helped us pick it up. They were super benevolent. And you know, if it wasn't for great companies like Monuments Across Dixie, this couldn't happen. And you know, it happened in the blink of an eye. Beside myself that we were able to accomplish this in such a quick amount of time.